Prepare for takeoff, please.
It's the Shipping Pod.
Hello and welcome to the Shipping Pod. I am your host, Tim Dooner. The chair across from me is empty. And Ryan will be on a little bit later with some big news about his future with the show, where the road is going to take him, and what he's going to be up to. So stay on for that. We'll have him on after today's main topic, which is piracy. Usually here, in the past few weeks, you've heard me do a read for Audible. We've made a few changes over here, little spring cleanings going on, and instead of going for sponsors in the route of doing ad reads and giving you promo codes or discounts or whatnot, I have decided to sign us up on Patreon.com. Patreon is an internet-based site that allows you, the listener, to support content creators whose works you enjoy. You can head over to patreon.com/theshippingpod to see what we have to offer. There's various perks for donating X amount of money to keep the show running. There aren't a ton of costs as of yet with running a podcast, but we do have to pay our hosting fees. We would like to look into advertising, would like to bring in a bit of a crew, and maybe, buy a Dunkin' Donuts coffee for a guest here and there. So we'll see how that goes. If you're interested, go right ahead. Go to patreon.com/theshippingpod and give anything from $1 to whatever you want. But you don't have to. The show is always free. That is not a subscription service by any means. How'd your week go? Did you guys all have a great St. Patrick's Day? I didn't really do anything. St. Patrick's Day is kind of amateur league. I stopped drinking last year, so for me, I don't know. That kind of seems to, for better or worse, define the holiday. And since I don't partake, there's not much there for me. But I've also got a wife. I've got the 2 kids. There was plenty to do at home. I believe we may have gone to Dairy Queen or something instead. But I'm not going to lie, I did miss some aspects of it, especially when I lived in Southie. One of my, as much as you hate it, and I don't think many people who live there actually like the St. Patrick's Day parade, but we used to have friends come over. It was a good time, and you'd always see people get drunk. We lived right next to this bar called the Shamrock, which was still one of the only kind of local towny vestiges in the entire city. It was a citadel of captured culture, and you'd always just hear drunk ladies ambling out of there, going, Janice, pull some creatures out of the Shamrock. Always a good time. Maybe better times left in the past, and I don't have to deal with them, but I definitely was wondering what Janice was up to, and had she pulled any creatures out of the bar this particular year. What else this week? For me, the only other thing I've really been up to that is of any interest is I started using this app called MyFitnessPal, and it's a calorie counting app. So you put in your starting height, your starting weight, your age. You tell it your goal, how much you want to lose. I put in lose 2 pounds a week because why not? Let's get aggressive with it. And it'll tell you how many calories to eat a day. So I've been doing that for like 5 days straight. I've been hitting my goals and hitting my targets on there. It's pretty fun to see. I'll see how that pans out. I started out, man, when you start getting up in your 30s, the metabolism slows down. I'm at like 222 starting, so I want to bring that down. I have my goal at 2 pounds a week. We'll see where it ends up. And if days get too tough, a friend of mine made a really good point. The app only knows what you put in, so if you slip up and you don't put anything in there, hey, it's not going to know, but it's not really going to help your waistline either, so we'll see. Not really going to do a bunch of news today, but a piece of news just went right across my desk, and that is about the US and UK ban on big electronic devices in the cabins of planes due to increased terror threats. Now, this doesn't appear to be tied into the immigration ban or anything to that effect, but it says here the US banned passengers from carrying most electronics larger than a cell phone into the cabin on direct flights arriving from 8 countries in the Middle East and North Africa, citing evaluated intelligence about terrorism. Those countries are Egypt, Jordan, Kuwait, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. No U.S. airlines are affected because they don't directly serve the airports subject to the restrictions, and flights from the U.S. to these destinations aren't subject to the same limitations. The instructions come at a time of heightened concern about terrorist threats to air travel. Attackers have repeatedly sought to hide explosive devices in electronic equipment and other items to smuggle them past security checks to bring down planes. Al-Qaeda has regularly published bomb-making advice to make such information widely available. So it looks like that just became enacted. It says the US here, but there looks like there's an addendum that the UK either has adopted it or is looking to adopt it as well. We'll see how that goes. That's kind of brand new, and I'm just looking at a quick article on it. Now, piracy. Piracy is our main topic today, and I wanted to dive into it because it's pretty meaty. So I didn't want to front end this with a bunch of news. Maybe if there's some time left, Ryan and I might cover some of those when he does his announcement, but most likely not. So piracy. We all remember when the Somali pirates were a huge deal on the news from, let's say around 2009 to 2012, 2013. The peak of it seemed to coincide with the release of the Captain Phillips movie with Tom Hanks, who played the eponymous title character, Captain Phillips, with the Somali pirates taking over a boat. Real U.S. operation, super interesting, but I think most of you are well aware of that one. There's also, of course, the fictional movies like Captain Jack Sparrow over there and Pirates of the Caribbean. There's the Ice Pirates, great B movie. There's Space Pirates. So pirates have had a lot of play. There's no shortage of pirates. One of the most popular Halloween costumes. I bet Ryan often went as a pirate as a kid. I was more of a vampire myself, but you know how it is. Piracy may as well be as old as the sea itself. For our purposes, piracy is defined as an act of robbery or violence by shipborne attack on another ship. Incidents of piracy are documented as far back as 14th century BC, when the Sea Peoples, a confederative group, sailed the eastern Mediterranean and invaded Anatolia, Syria, Cyprus, and Egypt toward the end of the Bronze Age. It isn't known who exactly the Sea Peoples were, but there's much speculation that they were comprised of Aegean tribes and other raiders for Central Europe that were disenfranchised and joined up and, went with the pirate life, tried to get that loot. The word pirate finds its etymology in the Latin term pirata, meaning sailor, corsair, or sea robber. But piracy isn't just a rogue act. Many nations employ their own form of private state-sponsored ships known as privateers. Privateers engage in maritime warfare under a commission of war. This allows them to attack foreign vessels during war and keep them as prizes. The proceeds from captured ships were then divided between the privateer sponsors, ship owners, captains, and crew. Privateering also helped to bolster the naval forces of the sponsor states as they hurt enemy nations' supply chains with these attacks on rival merchant ships. Throughout history, pirate groups have spanned the globe. In medieval Europe, there were the Vikings from Scandinavia, who ruled the coasts of Western Europe, North Africa, Italy, and the Baltic Sea. The Greeks and Romans were both pirates and victims of piracy themselves. Legend has it that on one voyage across the Aegean Sea in 75 BC, Julius Caesar was kidnapped by pirates and ransomed. Caesar was so offended by the pirates' low asking price for his return that he demanded they increase it. Man, imagine the ego on that guy. Someone ought to stab him in the back. The Moors, the Slavs, Arabs, the Christians all had their own groups of marauders, as did the Irish, British, and Welsh. The Barbary along North Africa, while Asian pirates plagued the Tonkin Gulf, down to the Caribbean where French Tortuga and English Jamaican forces reigned. While state-sponsored privateering has moved into the shadows, a modern form of piracy has rose to prominence. And seaborne piracy against transport vessels remains a significant issue, with worldwide losses exceeding $16 billion a year, with the highest number of incidents in the Red Sea, Indian Ocean, off the Somali coast, and in the Strait of Malacca and Singapore. In the late 2000s, the emergence of piracy off the coast of Somalia forced a multinational effort led by the United States to patrol the waters off the Horn of Africa. As navies have decreased and trade has increased since the end of the Cold War, organized piracy has become much easier. Piracy hit its peak in 2010 with 445 incidents, but has been declining ever since, to a low last year of 191 incidents, according to Statista. At their peak, Somali pirates were making an estimated $120 million annually, while reportedly costing the shipping industry between $900 million and $3.3 billion a year. Wow, that's some range. That stat comes from Statista, but they got a pretty wide range here. And our purpose today, and I don't mean to run through the entire history of piracy, but it is so dense we would be here forever. And going back to the olden days of piracy, perhaps that's something that we can cover down in the future. But right now, the focus that we're going to look at is the state of modern piracy from about, let's say, 2008 to current. And the seas of piracy are definitely changing. By 2012, only 5 ships were captured, a decrease from 27 in 2010. However, attacks remain consistent. They're just less successful. And reasons are better crew training and defenses, as well as patrols out in the seas. While many nations don't allow merchant ships to carry weapons, in 2011, the U.S. allowed U.S.-flagged ships to have armed security. In addition, crews are being better trained to fight back with fire hoses that shoot seawater at pirates attempting to board, flares, nets, and if all else fails, some ships have a panic room known as a citadel that the crew can lock themselves in. So you might ask yourself, why has there been a decline in Somalia? Yeah, we're seeing increases in defense, we're seeing increases in patrols over there, and that has sucked the money dry from these Somali pirates. It's not easy to get a loan if you're a Somali pirate, I'll tell you that much. So modern pirates, they aren't always interested in the cargo. And that makes sense too. It's not like you can just pull a pirated ship into port and pull 8,000 TEUs off with the gantry train and start cracking open containers. You're going to get caught by satellite imagery pretty quick. I'm not sure if the government of Mogadishu is going to let that fly. I think they want it to be a little bit more inconspicuous if they sponsor it at all, which I'm not saying that they do. So what are they targeting? They're targeting the personal belongings of the crew as well as the cash in the safe, which potentially has large sums of money for payroll and port fees. In addition, they may want to ransom the crew or the ship itself. Kidnapping is a big game out at sea. So part of the decline of piracy has been advanced defense measures and naval patrols. However, pirates also are finding it much difficult to get loans and financing because these attacks are becoming much less successful based on this difficulty. Pirates are being deterred as they attempt to board these ships. If you look here at some statistics from the ICC, which is ICC International Maritime Bureau, you're gonna see that in Somalia, most of the attacks have all but eroded. In 2011, you had 160 attacks, 2012, 49, 2013, 7, 2014, only 3, 2015, 0 attacks. So it does seem that these defenses are working, and the piracy down in Somalia has become much less of an issue due to them. However, since most people who turn to piracy and handle the dirty work are impoverished, the allure of millions of dollars at sea is hard to resist. International law is in place to stem the tide, and most nations abide by the universality principle, whereby a government may exercise jurisdiction over conduct outside its territory if that conduct is universally dangerous. That said, many pirates are not prosecuted, as they're usually not citizens of the arresting nation, so they don't want them in their courts or prisons. The countries they come from don't want them back, or if they have the death penalty in place, the arresting nations may not be interested or completely refuse to extradite them based on their own treaties. As some nations don't allow merchant vessels to carry weapons, private security forums have also opened up floating armories in international waters for protection of crew and cargo, where they can arm themselves up to the point of reaching coastal waters where they would then be illegal. So they can get some firepower on board, another deterrent for pirates. The pirates themselves are armed to the teeth these days. Modern pirates use rubber rafts, skiffs, larger feeder vessels, GPS, sonar, AK-47s and other machine guns, machetes, RPGs and grenade launchers. These are all weapons that are found in use by the Somali pirates. Now, the best protection, obviously, is just simply avoiding them using radar to navigate around their waterways. We've seen ships accidentally get into their waters by trying to avoid storms or cut delivery times. There's a lot of pressure by the shipping conglomerates to make your docking time, and that occasionally can lead to a ship diverting course. Sometimes that course can be into pirate water. Well, when you end up in pirate water, pirate things tend to happen. But let's say you can't avoid them if engaged. Other defense systems are sonic blasters, laser-assisted flashing lights, which help blind the Somali pirates. There are vessel boarding protection systems, such as hot water walls, electrically charged water walls, flamethrowers, and slippery foam. So all of these are put on the side of the boat, along with those fire hose seawater cannons. If you've ever watched one of these, any of the videos of Somali boarding attempts, you're going to see a lot of these cannons firing down on the boats. The pirates a lot of times aren't deterred by these, but some of the stuff like the electrically charged water walls, these are newer tools put in place. And these hot water walls are newer tools being employed that have really sort of stemmed the tide on the Somali piracy, as of course they don't have the ability to overcome that. Large ships are also satellite tracked, so any deviation from course would send out an alert and quicken response time. So what's the outlook? What's the outlook for piracy? According to ICC, International Maritime Bureau, in 2015 there were 246 attempted attacks by pirates. 108 of those were in Indonesia, 27 in Vietnam, 14 in Nigeria, 13 in both Malaysia and India, and the rest were scattered throughout those regions. However, there were 0 in Somalia. Well, until just recently. Let's talk about a few attacks. Somali pirates are making a comeback. The Somali pirates will find themselves back on the ICC list for this year as they seized a tanker on Monday, March 13th. The tanker and her crew were delivering fuel to Mogadishu when they were approached and boarded by 2 men on skiffs. The European Union anti-piracy operation in the region said that the pirates were holding the Sri Lankan crew of 8 captive and demanded a ransom. Local elders and officials were able to negotiate a successful release without incident or arrest. The pirates claim that they hijacked the tanker to protest illegal fishing in the area that has threatened their livelihoods. They blamed fishing boats sailing under the flags of Yemen, China, India, and Iran. The pirates threatened to return to piracy if the legal fishing isn't stopped. What are we going to do about that one, guys? That's a tough situation over there for these Somali pirates and fishermen. Before they originally turned to piracy, They were fishermen themselves. I mean, that's where they got the boats and the seafaring know-how from, and they saw a big cut into that market happening to them, so they took to the waters to strike back. And this isn't to defend the Somali pirates, but they do have their own water space, which is being completely abused and overfished. Yeah, I don't know about this one. Another incident. In March of 2012, the crew of the Naham 3, a longline fishing trawler, disappeared somewhere in the deep black waters of the western Indian Ocean. When out of the darkness of the early morning hours, a small boat emerged alongside the Naham 3. Gunfire cut through the fog and the captain screamed, "It's pirates! It's pirates!" But it was too late. The Naham 3 was boarded, its crew bound and kidnapped aboard the vessel as it changed course for Somalia. There, the 29 crew members were led to an encampment deep in the Somali desert, held for ransom while their captors gathered information. The men were interrogated about their families and financial status. When the pirates didn't like what they heard, that they were poor fishermen from the Philippines, Vietnam, China, and Cambodia, the truth. They beat the men with bamboo poles and left them to wither in the unbearable desert sun. Others faced mock executions at gunpoint. All the while, each sailor was given but a liter of water a day to survive on, and not enough food to ration. Food was so scarce that they resorted to trapping rats, birds, wild cats, and insects to eat. All the while, the Somali pirates dreamed of money literally falling from the sky, as the preferred method of paying ransom was to parachute money wrapped in plastic from airplanes. Leslie Edwards, the lead negotiator of the sailors' release, remarked, "The pirates were uneducated, obstructionist, unmotivated, and unrealistic. They picked poor fishermen from poor families. They were dreaming about huge amounts of money they were never going to get." As negotiations persisted, one of the sailors fell gravely ill and was left to die in the sweltering sun. Another was shot to death for disobedience or pleasure. It's not known. and a third died from malnutrition. Finally, after 1,672 days, in October of 2016, negotiations ended, as the nonprofit Oceans Beyond Piracy and a British law firm came to an agreeable amount with the pirates, which was said to be a pittance compared to what they asked. Upon release, former captive Antonio Libris Jr. said, "The pirates are worse than animals. You can't understand these people." Arnel Balberio, another captive, stated, "Even if I tell you all the bad words in the world, that isn't enough for them." But he continues with a glimmer of hope. What are you going to do? The important thing is to start over. For more information on modern hijacking, you can look up many articles online, but if you're looking for some resources you don't feel like reading, you want to watch a movie, there's obviously Captain Phillips that many people have seen. That's sort of the Hollywoodized reenactment of a true life incident. However, one of my favorites is also a true story. It's called A Hijacking, and that revolves around the hijacking of a Danish cargo ship with a heavy focus on the negotiations between the shipping conglomerate and the Somali pirates. And I believe this one came out in 2012. And I think that listeners of this particular show would probably find more value in that than Captain Phillips, because it really shows the politics that go on between, the shipping company itself, the shipping line, and what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do to get these crew members back, and the fears they have of future piracy and the politics involved. It's really kind of juicy stuff. Some people might find it slow, some people might find it boring, but others are going to find it wildly intriguing. I know that I did. I highly recommend it. It's called The Hijacking. It came out in 2012. Fantastic little film. Check it out. So there's a couple of great episodes of Locked Up Abroad. One of them, I believe, deals with Abu Sayyaf. It may have been another terrorist group, but I know that name sounds awfully familiar. I haven't seen that particular episode of Locked Up Abroad in a while, but it shows the conditions that these seamen are put in when they're captured by the pirates, and it is not a good life. If you are being held up by pirates, I can imagine you'd want to be ransomed pretty quick. We heard the harrowing story of the folks on the Narum 3 and the abuse that they took. And not just physical, completely mental abuse and the erosion of self as you sit out there cooking in the sun, eating rats. And treated, it sounds like garbage from how they were. I can't imagine the PTSD involved with that. It sounds absolutely horrible, but I guess there's an allure to some parts, some aspects of life that way. It's always interesting to me how humans act and humans operate in extreme conditions. I'm a huge fan of Locked Up Abroad, too. I caught an episode of Locked Up Abroad just yesterday. It's an older one, but it's about a lady who went into Egypt, and it touches back to, human trafficking. See, she went down to Egypt to adopt a baby, and she initially thought that it was legit. You know, she met in a real office that looked like there was real paperwork, but as she started to go through the process, she had to go to a sketchy church and wait around for a while for some documents to get stamped, and then eventually they handed her a baby. I think she wanted the baby so much that even though she knew this probably wasn't on the up and up, she was willing to go for it. Now, that doesn't make it morally right, but it's what she attempted to try. She attempted to do. Then she went. Her mother had cancer, so she had to fly back to the United States. So she went to the embassy there in Egypt, and she tried to get paperwork for herself and for her baby. You know, even though, because it was a brand new baby to her, she didn't want to leave it behind and leave it in the care of her husband. She wanted to have it with her and next to her and bond with the baby. It's such a crucial time in development for the child and for the mother. So it's understandable, despite how obviously kind of stupid it was, because the baby was not on the up and up. When she brought it to the embassy, they wanted to see pictures of the birth. They wanted a doctor's note. They wanted a DNA test. They wanted a bunch of things that she could not provide. She eventually gets arrested for human trafficking, because that's what it is when you take a baby from another country or to another place for pay or for exploitation. And even though she wasn't going to put the child in a sex ring, or she's probably going to give it a great life, it's still human trafficking, and that is a very, very serious crime in Egypt. So she had to serve some time. She was eventually freed, but Yeah, tough story. Always a great show, though. I feel like if any show is relevant to the shipping pod, it's probably Locked Up Abroad. Obviously, Locked Up Abroad's a much better show, but I think listeners, if you enjoy this show at all, you probably would also like Locked Up Abroad. This segment on pirates is a bit truncated. I had initially planned to record it with Ryan. However, that didn't come to fruition. Some things have come up with him, which when he comes on, we can discuss. And without further ado, here is Ryan Dooley to join the podcast.
Hello, Timothy.
Hey, Ryan.
It's good to be back here on the edge of the White Cliffs of Dover.
Yeah.
Just looking out over the English Sound.
I'm trying to make it sort of seamless, like you kind of just walked into my living room and sat down in a chair, and I didn't record the beginning of the show 6 hours ago and then drive over here.
Now the myth is lost. I was painting a word picture that was going to have us in, England. And now you've ruined that by giving the people the truth that this is all done from basements and seedy back alleys.
It really is. It's a studio in a bag, and we'll set up wherever there's electricity.
I do have an image in my head of somewhere down the road you'll be an on-site reporter with a podcast, and you'll be in like the back of like a mahjong parlor covered in smoke and everything like that. Really uncovering the truth. That's what I think you're gonna do in the future, man.
I'm looking forward to that. And as I was just saying to you before I came on the air, I was laughing about how ridiculous CNN has gotten with their news stories. Because one of the notifications that was sent to me was, how is the 1% going to prepare for the apocalypse? But then I thought of this. CNN has been in business for so long in the news business that they're just running out of things to write and running out of clickbait and running out of things to say. And that's going to happen to me too. So, by episode 100 or by episode 500, I'm going to be talking about how the 1% is going to survive the apocalypse.
Well, probably by then the apocalypse will have happened. So it'll be less how are they going to prepare and more about you'll be able to compare how close CNN was to what actually happened in the apocalypse.
It's like when you break down Mel Kiper's draft, his mock drafts beforehand, then you see who is drafted afterwards.
I was thinking more along the lines of comparing Back to the Future 2 to what actually happened in 2015. And we did not have holographic sharks as advertisements. The Cubs did win the World Series, a year off or so, but close. And we still don't have hoverboards. I don't care what you call those things that people are rolling around on, not hoverboards.
Yeah, the exploding lithium-ion battery mock hoverboard.
Yeah, I got to tell you, whoever wrote Back to the Future 2 totally missed that about the exploding batteries. They did not nail that.
I'm glad they missed the double tie, though, because I don't even like wearing one tie, but having to wear a double tie.
Although I really do wish I had an automatic, what do you call it, an auto-fit jacket, like when you hit the button on the corner and it just dries the jacket and fits to you.
Yeah.
I could get with that.
So you don't have to worry about clothing shrinking, and if you gain weight or lose weight, it grows with you or shrinks with you.
And as a man who constantly gains weight and sort of loses and then gains more weight, that would be very useful to me.
Hey, I was saying at the beginning of the show before you came on that I just started using the MyFitnessPal app. Are you familiar with that one?
I use it myself.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay. Do you do what my friend said to me, though? He said the best thing about the app is that you only have to... You self-report.
Yeah.
So it's on the honor system. So if you cheat, you don't have to put it in there.
Yeah, you lie to yourself.
Yeah.
Of course. If I know that I'm going to completely blow my macros and be wildly over on my carbohydrates, all of a sudden I become less memorable about the pieces of bread that I had for lunch. So that's how I work.
What I learned with the app in the first week I used it, the first couple of days I just ate normally how I would snack. And it's amazing how quick like nuts and snacks and things you think are healthy can add up. You can get way over 2,000 calories way quicker than you think.
Oh, easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got the, string cheese. I eat string cheese like it's going out of style, and surprising amount of fat in cheese. Surprising amount.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is.
Yeah, nobody told the old duelster about that.
I mean, supposedly, look, if you're supposed to, let's say, I'm supposed to eat if I eat 1,800 calories, supposedly, I will lose 2 pounds a week if I stick to that.
Seems reasonable.
That's what they say. So supposedly I could eat 1,800 calories of Polly-O's string cheese.
You could.
I don't know how it would feel.
Horrible.
Yeah. I feel like I'd be very phlegmy. I'd be like,
yeah, I feel like
oh, jeez. Look.
Actually choking.
I got phlegmy just thinking about it.
I feel like no one would be happy if you were eating only string cheese.
Oh, thank God. I had to take a sip of water there.
I feel like you'd probably keel over from like a string cheese I don't know, you wouldn't even call it a heart attack. You would actually have cheese in your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a thing.
Just be completely clogged.
Yeah, that happens.
Hey, man, you know what's healthy for you, though?
What's healthy?
Seafood.
Hey, you're not wrong.
I am not wrong.
You are not wrong. Was this a seamless pass on to my attendance of the seafood show?
Yeah, I was going to ask you how the seafood show was.
It was an exciting adventure, my friends. It was. I went over there to the Boston Convention Center. What is it? The Boston Convention Expo Center. The BCEC right there in the seaport. Huge turnout. I've heard mixed reviews from some of the other vendors that I went there as far as whether it was actually bigger than last year or a little bit smaller. Depending on which day you went there, people got different reviews. When I was there, I was on Monday. I was there for probably about 5 or 6 hours and went in there, saw a bunch of different customers, sampled a ton of seafood as I was walking around. Don't even think I really needed to eat dinner or anything that night because the tiny little mouthfuls of fish that I ate constituted way more than I should have eaten with fish. But it was a very well attended event. Didn't actually get to see. Every once in a while, I'll go check out one of the panels because they'll sometimes have stuff on the appropriate way to eat lobster or something. Nothing like that. Nothing that caught my fancy when I was walking around there, but was able to talk to a number of customers I've worked with in the past, customers I work with now that export and import seafood. Also ran into a handful of my competitors. I mean, everybody, all of the lines send somebody up here. Well, I shouldn't say all of them, the majority of lines though. And so it was actually funny between the seafood show on Monday and then just going to normal work on Tuesday. The amount of people that I've run into that were like, oh, do you know who I ran into at this hotel last night? And I'm like, let me guess. And it will be the representative from CMA, the representative from, NYK, whatever it is. I mean, just random people getting run into there. So it was a very well-attended event. A lot of fun, a lot of good people, a lot of business being done because I tell you, it's really interesting to see people that you see on a day-to-day basis that do not necessarily sell for a living, that are more operationally speaking, sitting down and really trying to get into the negotiation tactic. It kind of gives you a new, I don't want to say that I didn't respect them before, but it gives you a new form of, it gives you a different angle to respect them from, to be like, oh, they're really out there grinding to make that money. So, good on you. Stay with it, Boston seafood companies.
Well, I've been to a number of trade shows, including the seafood show in the past, and compared to all of them, the seafood show always seems to have the nicest and most elaborate booths.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, do they have the giant polar bears?
Oh, yeah, preferred freezer.
Oh, those are awesome.
Preferred freezer. And I mean, you can't get anywhere close to it during the middle of the day to get a picture. I mean, I don't know if it's something that polar bears are just not something that is well advertised in Asia, but I feel like a ton of Indian gentlemen and a ton of the, Korean, Japanese, and Chinese people all flock to this thing to snap these pictures. I mean, it's a monstrous teddy bear. I mean, it's a giant. It's got to be a 14-foot high polar bear.
Yeah, it's
pretty impressive.
I put a picture of it on our Instagram a few days ago, just to say, one of us going to be at the seafood show. If you run into Ryan, say hi. And I had that picture of the polar bear, and it was I don't know, they're a sight to see. They're gigantic.
Insanity, man. I walked by it. I was actually going to snap a selfie for you on that one, and I got there, and it was just a throng of people.
You would have to really crane yourself to get a selfie because of just the height of the things.
Oh, I was holding it down by my waist, trying to angle up and try to get enough of it in there, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't actually frame it, so I was going to have to ask someone else to do it, and I was honestly just overwhelmed by the amount of people.
Yeah, that's a daunting task because it's really hard to take a flattering photo when it's just all chin and nostril upwards at a gigantic.
Not my best angle. Not where I'm looking sexy. That's for sure.
I prefer the downward drone.
Yeah, I always try to lay on my stomach, in bed, like this, and just with an arm out in front of me. That's how I do it.
The old MySpace angle.
Exactly. Yeah. But no, you're 100% right on the booths there, man. I mean, people bring in a ton of demo equipment and stuff because there's a bunch of machines that do seafood processing as well. So, I mean, you have quite literally everything. You have small vendors and small people that buy and sell fish, seafood, whatever. Fish, crustaceans, whatever, shellfish, all kinds of nonsense, all seafood. Then you have these major ones. I mean, the Gordon's Fisherman's there, with Slade Gordon, and then these random Bumblebee Tuna's there. I mean, huge brand name guys. And they're all mixed together. And then you also have all the vendors. I mean, DHL was there. I saw a handful of my competitors, like I just mentioned, Costco, CMA, the rest of these guys were there. Yang Ming was there. I mean, you have everybody and their brother turns out for this thing. So that's why I highly recommend it. next year, if you didn't go this year, next year, I highly recommend. If you're in any facet of the industry, totally worth. A little pricey, $150 for the day, but totally worth it.
But it's kind of all you can eat seafood buffet while you're there as well. And
Oh yeah,
it attracts a lot of street people. And I don't mean like street walkers. I just mean people who aren't like in the industry, people who are just generally interested
yeah.
in seafood.
No, you do. You end up with I actually talked to two people that, in all honesty, they just work in Boston, and they were just curious as to what the seafood show. Because, I mean, there's a golf expo, there's a ski and snowboard expo. I mean, across the way at the Seaport one, this is the other side of the street there. But two people that just came in, and they were just walking around in suits. And I happened to be standing next to them in line and looked at the name tag, and the name tag didn't have a company with it. So I just, out of curiosity, asked them, who are you with? And they're like, oh, we're just here just to check it out.
Was the New England Food Show going on in the back room, or do they not do those both at the same time anymore?
I don't know if it was there this year. It definitely was going on last year at the same time. Because last year when I was there, you could get a ticket for both. But when I signed up this time, I didn't see the option for both, so I assumed it wasn't, but I have no idea. And that's one that I don't attend, so I don't know anything about that one.
Yeah, because it was there in 2014, too, and I was there with a bunch of Canadians, and I found a booth that sold ketchup seasoning. It was like sprinkle on ketchup seasoning.
Interesting.
Well, ketchup French fries ketchup potato chips are huge in Canada.
Interesting. Okay.
So I was telling him, this booth sells Canadian bait, which is, basically just this ketchup seasoning.
Okie dokie, yeah.
And I got some too. It was interesting. I like myself some ketchup potato chips. You can get those up in Maine too.
I didn't know that was like a thing. I put ketchup and mustard actually on my potato chips.
I mean, why wouldn't it be a thing, right? Potatoes and ketchup go together like,
Absolutely.
Macaroni and cheese.
Absolutely.
Peanut butter and jelly.
Exactly. I was trying to think of one that was kind of odd, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
I am not on my game.
Well, it's all right. I was trying to think of one too, but it almost got too dirty. So I left it on the table.
Indeed.
Hey, well, so you ran into everyone in the industry there.
Oh yeah.
And a big news story broke in the Wall Street Journal just today.
Yeah.
And it's Maersk Line, Hapag-Lloyd among carriers subpoenaed in U.S. price-fixing probe. U.S. Justice Department investigators crashed a meeting of the world's 20th biggest container shipping operators and gave subpoenas to the top executives at several companies as part of a probe on price fixing.
Wow. That is unfortunate, man.
And it goes on here to say that, so this was at the so-called Box Club meeting in San Francisco last Wednesday.
Which I have to be honest, I don't even know, like the Box Club meeting. That's a new name. That's a new one on me. I don't know that.
So you weren't in that room, fortunately.
No. I was in Boston.
In addition, it says that the whatever lines weren't there, they went to their offices individually. So it seems like they're going around to everyone here during this probe. It's a full across the board subpoena.
Yeah.
And it looks like it might be preempting the formation of these newest alliances, which are holding about 90% of the world's cargo. So that could be what piqued their interest here.
Yeah, could be. So I've actually talked to a couple of people today about this, and I have no specific knowledge about it. Nothing of, real detail or note outside to say is that people that have been in the business much longer than me, I talked to a couple of 30, 35-year veterans with this, they say that from time to time the FMC will do these kind of audits. So it's one of those things that it really depends on what tone you want to read the article in. If you want to read the article in the tone of the Department of Justice broke into the Box Club meeting and served the top executives, then it sounds bad. If you look at it from the Department of Justice walked in and, served them to retain data regarding price practices, etc., it really depends on what light you want to see it in. I'm interested to see how this one plays out because this is all, breaking news right now. So I'll be interested to see, if there's anything of merit that really warrants it, or if it is just purely like auditory, that's not right. If there's a purely audit going on or pure audit, I don't know what the word is for that. How do you say
audit based?
Audit based. We'll go
I guess
audit
so.
based.
We'll go with audit based.
If it's purely audit based, then then hopefully everybody's on the up and up. I have the unusual history of I actually worked for a company that did get caught up in a price fixing collusion. It was long before I was even on the commercial side of the business, so I was, in all honesty, a sideline viewer for this, and It was a privately owned organization, domestic carrier, but they were found guilty, and they were they were found guilty for stupid reasons. People getting busted for texting other members of other competitors, and essentially coming to an agreement, loosely coming to an agreement regarding not competing for rates, which violates certain antitrust laws, in regards to price fixing and collusion. And I got to tell you, so we saw a similar message last time, and it was coordinated with the entrance of the Department of Justice to confiscate everyone's computer and start the investigation. That was not the case this time, so I'm very hopeful that this is a purely audit-based effort.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to see the word subpoena and not read it a little bit with a little bit of fear and a little bit of trepidation, because it does sound scary. But as we've talked about numerous times, in terms of rates, if you guys are price fixing, you're price fixing on a race to the bottom. Yeah. So it doesn't really make that much sense. The industry lost well over $5 billion last year. Yeah. That doesn't seem like the byproduct of fixing, unless, of course, there is effery going on around with the accounting or something to that effect. Yeah. They find out, maybe they think everyone colluded to get rid of Hanjin. I have no idea what they're looking for here. I don't think you do either. No, I have no idea. And it's one of those ones that you really just, like you just said, if we are price fixing, we're doing it wrong. if that's what's out there, I have no idea. But it's just like, are you kidding me? We're not winning. We're not on any kind of a positive streak here. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure that the steamship lines would like each other to set a much higher floor. Yes, it would be a lovely, lovely thing if that could happen. But I've actually been out, as we've discussed in the past. It's contract season, so I've actually been out really pounding the pavement and trying to get as much market intel as I can from customers as to, what kind of rates we're going to be talking about this year. And if there's one thing I can guarantee you, is that we have not been able to stem the tide of tumbling rates. Yeah. Well, so we'll keep an eye on this one. Again, this is just breaking news. It happened last Wednesday, but the Wall Street Journal just reported it this afternoon. So it's out there now. Cat's out of the bag. It's in the public. Yeah, it is public knowledge now. So it'll be interesting to see. And my real concern that I have is that I've touched on this before, and so pardon me if it's a little bit redundant. Part of the problem with Hanjin is that there's a speculative nature when it comes to, any business. If you think bad things are going to happen. I.e., take Hanjin. People started thinking something was wrong with Hanjin. They started not doing business with Hanjin, which created something being wrong with Hanjin. Not to say that there wasn't problems already, but it exacerbates the problem. A couple of months ago, there's articles written about, speculation of who's going to be the next candidate to be the next Hanjin and collapse. Well, that creates problems. Then all of a sudden customers start backing away from certain carriers. That creates a negative impact. You see an article like this. Hapag Lloyd and Maersk were served with subpoenas. I mean, there's somebody out there that, when given the opportunity of working with Hapag versus CMA, will very likely choose CMA because they read Hapag was in the headline there. I mean, it's a concern that I have when it comes to these kind of reports. Not that there's anything wrong with reporting them, and not that there's anything wrong with the journalism behind it, but it does have an impact. I mean, words really go far, and people in this industry are well informed, because that Wall Street Journal article, you can almost guarantee, is going to be, reproduced or is repackaged and end up in all of the industry periodicals, if they're not. I'm not 100% up to date on my JOC and stuff like that, but if it's not already in there, I guarantee it'll be in there tomorrow. It'll be on the website tomorrow. Oh yeah, this thing's getting retweeted left and right. It's getting shared all over LinkedIn. It's getting shared social media. Oh yeah. Absolutely. It's the talk of the town, and until it's over with, it's probably not going to go away. Nope. But hey, before you came on, I kind of stumbled my way talking and stuttered my way talking about pirates and piracy and modern piracy, mostly talking about the rise and fall of the Somali pirates. That was kind of the focus, was modern piracy there, because it was an interesting take, because you saw kind of the incidents of piracy really start to ratchet up 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, and then it just completely fell off a cliff. Like, they completely stemmed the tide. There hasn't been an incident of Somali piracy until last week since 2012. Really? Yeah. Interesting. But what I wanted to ask you is, when you were on ships and when you were in the academy, what kind of drills did they have for piracy? Yeah, unfortunately, back then, there really wasn't much in the way of drills at the academy.
there was a general sense of, what to do in those scenarios, but it's not necessarily like the fire and boat drills and, abandoned ship drills and things that you would do on a regular basis. It was something that really just was not as prevalent, on the foreground because the Maersk, Alabama had not happened and then it had not gotten major notoriety and such. I do know for a fact now there is training that's involved in it. It was actually an ongoing a joke that we had. You would take classes and you would get information about what to do, but it was not something that it's not like you had an entire class based on it. It's not like you had an entire semester of training and learning how to handle this. I mean, there are techniques on it, and I will spare you the gory details, but they involve largely, exactly what you saw in the movie of Captain Phillips. Of changing your course and bobbing and weaving to create too much of a wake for them to be able to approach you, and turning on the fire hoses, which, if you've never been hit with a fire hose, that actually is not pleasant. I had that one time.
Yeah, I think we've all seen those. When they show the YouTube videos of a lot of these pirate boardings, the fire hose is kind of the first thing you see.
Yeah.
And one thing I talked about is some of the newer technology that the boats have been employing, which is electrified water walls, hot water walls, foam, like real spy hunter type stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting stuff, man.
Well, you know what, too? One of the reasons that, I guess the speculative... See, even pirates need loans. So I was finding out the Somali pirates, once they stopped being successful boarding them, once they started putting floating armadas and security teams following these boats, and NATO was patrolling the waters, it made it much more difficult for the pirates. They were no longer successful. So the warlords or whomever and the elders who were paying for the pirates to do it, well, they weren't seeing the return anymore on investment, so there kind of went the pirate market.
It's a tough day to be a pirate now. I mean, it's a crumbling market.
Yeah, I mean, it still exists throughout the world. It just, usually they're targeting the smaller boats because what are you going to do with 8,000 TEUs? You can't just bring that into port, start unloading containers left and right.
Seriously, I mean, it's like the dog that catches the car. Well, what are you going to do with it now?
But did they say anything about, like, if they did get on board, like, worst case scenario, they're boarding the ship? Mm-hmm. Did they tell you what to do then?
Yeah, a lot of times it's like it was very similar to, at least I should clarify something from earlier that I was saying, is that they do actually have the classes now, and they do a lot more training now. My understanding from my alma maters is that they do actually offer full-blown training. For us, it was more of a conversational explanation, and it's essentially a hold-in-place sort of thing, where it's like, you're going to find yourself a secure location and, follow instructions from the captain and the chief officers as it goes, which is exactly what they did in the movie. I mean, if you watch Captain Phillips there, I mean, they secured as many people as they could down there in the engine room, and, trying to secure and hold in place is a little bit more, it's a little bit easier to do inside the house of the ship. Once they've gotten on, I mean, there are measures you can take because the doors do have, locking mechanisms that are pretty intense. Your average Somali pirate's not going to come on with a blowtorch and be able to hack his way through it. Now, unfortunately, that's all predicated on everything going completely correct, but those are your best efforts, is essentially to lock yourself in, stay safe, and, wait for the whatever local Coast Guard authority is that can support you.
It was really interesting when I was researching these Somali pirates, at least, because it seems like, nobody was taking it seriously. Nobody was taking the threat of piracy seriously, that they were able to operate pretty successfully. By 2012, I think they'd gotten 25, 27 boats. I forget exactly what I said earlier. I don't have my figures in front of me, but that was kind of peak piracy. They'd managed to get on 27 vessels, and that was unheard of.
Yeah.
But once they made some changes, they started bringing in these patrols, they started bringing in security, and they started using advanced maneuvers and just using radar to simply stay out of waters by Mogadishu.
Yeah.
It really made it made it fall off a cliff.
It did, and it does, and the only problem you really run into with this is that, like, to your point earlier, is like, okay, and then it started ratcheting up. So my father was also a captain of a ship and was over in that particular part of the world, and
I'm the son of a sea captain.
Exactly. And he was over in that part of the world, and from his stories is that it's always been a real problem, and it's always been, something that's out there that people are aware of. It's just one of those things that, well, nothing really tremendously horrible has happened. And then there was a recent documentary that I just thought of right now, so I don't know what the name of it is, but there was a documentary on it where they showed like, oh, this has happened actually a number of times. However, these guys are looking to get paid. So when they get on there, they'd also have a negotiator with them, and they'd negotiate with the company, get paid, and get off the ship, and then they go. And since it wasn't quite as big, put it this way, since the Navy SEALs weren't deployed, it doesn't really get any headlines. And so this stuff has been going on since shipping's ever been around, since, back when they started ships and the Vikings started pirating and pillaging everybody, or pilfering and pillaging.
As old as the sea.
Exactly.
As old as man could think about taking a grape or some grain from the man next to him.
Exactly.
There's been piracy, and whether it be at water or via land.
And that's why I have no facts on it, so I don't know. I mean, if they've been able to really put a dent in it and stem the tide of it, then great. That's awesome. Glad to hear it.
In Somalia, but Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, that's where the highest incidents are happening right now.
Straits of Malacca.
Yeah, a lot of those, I guess, are organized by terrorist groups who are taking the boats for ransom and kidnapping people on the boats to get money to help fund their terrorist groups and other activities. It was interesting to me, though, because I always thought they wanted the cargo. I knew that they held the crew on board ransom, but I also thought that they wanted the cargo. But then, now that I'm thinking about it, it makes sense that unless it's a smaller ship, there's really nothing they can do with the gigantic Maersk vessel. I mean, it's just going to sit. They're going to find that on satellite imagery pretty quickly. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is a hostage situation. That's it. I mean, whether it's the cargo being held hostage or the people being held hostage, it's a hostage exchange that they're trying to just get the money. Yeah, that's it. And I mean, it's not all. I mean, it is. They're all acts of terrorism, but it's. I mean, take the ones that we were just talking about from Captain Phillips. I mean, these guys are trying to get money so that they can fund their village because they no longer can be fishermen. Me personally, I don't think that terrorism is, I don't know, maybe go work at a call center or something. I don't know. Maybe there's something else you can do outside of terrorism, but hey, who am I? What do I know? I don't know. There's either that or getting human trafficked or any of the other awful things we've talked about that occur in the third world. It just gets so dark sometimes. Yeah. But I mentioned also at the beginning that there's a reason I did the piracy segment alone. And I mentioned that you would be having a big announcement later on about your future with the show. Indeed. And now I'm here in front of you. Yes. So, much to my dismay, I will have to be departing as the regular co-host of the Shipping Pod here. Unfortunately, my schedule is just increased exponentially with a handful of other endeavors that I have between some work, new schoolwork that I've taken on because I'm pursuing my master's degree, and then on top of that I have some new I don't want to say extracurricular, but some new industry related things with my activities, with Connect, as well as a handful of other things that I do, speaking engagements and such. It's just I'm afraid that I'm going to be running a little thin on material and being unable to provide you with the support that you need, Tim, to be able to put the old Shipping Pod out there. So, good people, I will be departing as the regular co-host with the hopes that I can come back as a guest and come back and join and throw my 2 cents in whenever possible. Well, do you remember when the Jimmy Kimmel show first started? Yes. So, he could get guests, but he couldn't always get guests. So he would have Adam Carolla on pretty frequently. It was a good buddy of his. Exactly. So he would have Mr. Adam Carolla come in the studio and and fill the chair. And I figure the same thing can happen with you down the road as your schedule gets lighter. I thought you were going to say that you've already booked Adam Carolla. I haven't booked Adam Carolla. However, the chair is not going to be empty next week. Oh, I am going to have our first real guest on here. He's gonna be a co-host and co-guest, not a permanent co-host or anything, just for one episode, and that is my old man, Jerry Dooner. Jerry Dooner, former vice president of Roanoke Insurance Group, trade and marine insurance group, and he's gonna come on and talk about his life in the business, why he tried to raise me as a Jets fan. That's unfortunate. Oh. What was life like moving between New York and Boston and his time in the industry. He knows a lot of people throughout this business. He spent a lot of time here shaking hands and paying bar tabs. So he's a well-informed man with some great stories to share. And, I'm looking forward to it. I was initially going to save that one for probably like Father's Day or something. But, there's an opportunity. There's the chance. And, I shouted out to him and he said, hey, I would love to come on the show. Awesome.
Have you announced your April surprise guest yet?
Not exactly yet, because I just want to have a
Alrighty.
date. I don't want to have to come on and then say, well, no, it's been pushed to this time and that time. So
Gotcha.
I want to have it ironed down with the guest. It probably would be announced on social media even before a show, unless I knew I was recording that next day or two, because,
Gotcha.
again, things come up.
Yeah, of course. Of
But,
course.
yeah, we do have some more guests. I have a guest over in the UK who had just reached out to me.
Really?
Yeah, he works with a shipping firm out there. Very interested in getting a part of there. So I'll do my first remote with him. We have a great inventor, former nurse, made a great product. It was on the Shark Tank. She's going to be coming on in April. So
Super
we're
duper.
gonna start filling the plate up, and the weather's getting nicer too. So people are going to want to leave the house and travel, and
Of
and
course.
so am I.
Of course. Well, if you want, I'm happy to come back and give you my 2 cents after the Newport one for sure. Because
Yeah.
I'm going to I'll be at the TNT with a handful of our my coworkers from Yang Ming, and as well as everybody else in the industry. So if you're not already scheduled to do something at that, or if you're not already scheduled for it, you can count me in that I will come back and give you a firm review on that if it's so in the schedule, sir.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, I'm sure the listeners really appreciate your time here, and so did I.
Thank you very much. I appreciated you guys having me.
There's a couple new, I guess, spring, so a few changes going on with the shipping pod. At the beginning of the show, I didn't do an audible read. We're
I saw you said that, huh?
yeah, so I'm moving away from the, I guess, using the sponsor model where, I'm asking listeners or having to do reads where I want you guys to go and subscribe to underwear or get Sherry's Berries or,
I thought for sure you were going to rip off on a MeUndies gig.
the MeUndies, yeah. I was going to go there. I don't want to clip on Billy Burr too hard over there. But, we've heard all the reads a billion times. Stamps.com, get your stamp thing. And a lot of podcasts I've noticed have started to use Patreon, as do a lot of creators on there. And the freeing thing about that is you guys don't have to pay for anything. The show is always still going to be free. It's still on iTunes. It's still on SoundCloud, Stitcher. It's still all the places it's always going to be, as well as the shippingpod.com. This just allows you, if you're a listener, if you want to donate $1, $5, $20, whatever you want to donate, you can. If you feel like it, then there's different tiers and levels. There's some perks involved. There'll be better ones coming up in the future, but it's kind of, this pirate ship is still pretty early on, so
Indeed.
So we're starting off that way, and I hope you guys appreciate that. I won't beg too often, but if you do want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/theshippingpod. That's patreon.com/theshippingpod.
Nice.
And other ways you can get to us, always theshippingpod.com, Instagram /theshippingpod, Twitter @theshippingpod, info@theshippingpod.com to email us. And what else do we have? I don't know. Or iTunes, all those other things.
Yeah. You can get this podcast anywhere podcasts are free.
Yeah, anywhere. We're not going to charge for it.
There you
Although, there might be some bonus content as well on the Patreon. I did notice you can do a secret RSS feed. So
Interesting.
So people who are Patreons or who are patrons of the show can get a slightly different version or a slightly enhanced version, or I might even produce a second show just for that where maybe I do some news reads or something. I'm not really sure. I'm going to
Nice.
work it out, and you guys send me some suggestions. I'd be happy to to service whatever you need.
So it'll be like after the shipping pod. So it'll be like the shipping pod wake. It'll be the wake of the shipping pod.
Or like the shipping pod after dark.
Ooh.
Like they had on 90210
There
with
you
the
go.
Peach Pit after
Peach
dark.
Pit after dark. Absolutely.
And Flaming Lips played that.
Yeah. Hell, if you could get
Flaming Lips on here.
yeah, or Tiffany Amber Thiessen, either one.
Either one.
Either one would work.
I would take anyone. I would take Bag. I would take Brian Austin Green.
I think what you need to get Billy Redface on here. I want Bill Burr to join you one day.
I wish I'd love to have him on too. He doesn't know anything necessarily about shipping, but he's a consumer of goods, and he's an everyman. So I feel like no matter what I say to him, he could come back with something.
I am going to start religiously because I listen to Bill Burr's Monday morning podcast, and I am going to start religiously writing letters until I get one through to him.
Yeah,
Because he reads the letters, but that gets screened through his producer. So I'm gonna have to really sauce it up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to really make it magical.
you got to get something to the level of the Granny Water read. That's always been a classic, right? Granny freaking Water.
Indeed. But now, I'm sorry. Now I have the MeUndies stuff stuck in my head. So that's where I'm at now.
Yeah.
This podcast might be being very professional. It's very unprofessional in my own brain.
Well, Ryan, we will see you back here soon, but for now, since it is your last show, why don't you sign us off?
This is Ryan Dooley for Tim Dooner, signing off for The Shipping Pod.
Dun, 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 dun.
Felt darker, right? Felt darker that time.
Yeah, I like that one. I might just keep that one for perpetuity. Take care, guys. We'll see you next week.
Drink, 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 drink with me. Drink to the pirates of the sea. Drink, 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 drink with me. Drink to the glory and victory. Oh, beautiful lady, come bring me more whiskey. I know nothing will hurt me until the morning comes. Drink, 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 drink with me. Drink to the pirates of the sea. Drink,